Hey ALP family, this is my recording of myself for the month 2 assignment for the Leadership Pod, talking about a subject I hope others will find valuable. This is my second take, so if it gets posted, just know that I did start another video and choked on my tongue, which is interesting to notice. But yeah, I wanted to share a subject with all of y'all that I find really interesting and hopefully will be valuable to you. It is how to forage wild psychoactive mushrooms safely in the northeastern United States. And this relates to my why around consciousness expansion. I've found these fungal allies to be really helpful in my own personal development and growth, and the fact that they occur naturally in a densely populated area in my country, I find really beautiful and also amusing, and want to share some tips in how to locate these special creatures in service of your own safe use and exploration of them, with the caveat that they are illegal, and so you should not pick them if you do not wish to break the law. So all of this information is purely for educational purposes and just to share something interesting with all of you. So with that said, these mushrooms are called Psilocybe ovariocystidiata, which is a mouthful, and most people just call them ovoids. They are a very small brown mushroom with a white stalk that contains psilocybin and psilocin, which are psychoactive, naturally occurring compounds in the mushroom. They occur throughout the northeastern United States, from like West Virginia to southern New York and as far west as Indiana and Ohio, from roughly March until May. So mid-springtime in the northeastern United States is when you can find these. And they have a beautiful habitat. They really love to grow in the floodplains of creeks and rivers, in the woody debris that accumulates in the sandy banks of the rivers. And in that part of the world, there's a lot of hardwood trees. There's deciduous, temperate, effectively a rainforest, really, that surrounds them. The northeastern United States gets a ton of moisture, so that's where you'll find them. And they grow in the springtime, right when the snowmelt passes and the rivers are still full of a lot of water, but they'll grow in these floodplains. And what you want to look for is these oxbow formations in the river when there's like a big, long, slow, lazy bend, and there's sandy soil, and there's like trees growing in the bend in the river in a flat area. That's really nutrient-rich soil, really sandy soil, where there's likely to be a lot of woody debris that have washed up. And the mushrooms eat that woody debris. So you want to go into those areas, ideally wearing long pants and gloves, because they share a habitat with stinging nettle, which is another medicinal plant that's wonderful to harvest while you're there, but will leave you very, very itchy if you're not prepared for it. So walk into these floodplains and look for a tree called a box elder, which will be one of the earlier trees in the area with leaves on it, and it will also have like a really knotty kind of trunk, uneven branch formation. They're typically pretty small as well, so they'll be easy to spot, and they also characteristically have what almost look like maple seeds. So if anybody's familiar with a maple, it's kind of like a winged seed pod. These box elders will pop out these maple-like seed pods very early in the season. So look for these floodplains that have these box elder trees in them, and ideally looking for ground cover with stinging nettle, and a small type of kind of like circular leafed clover. I'm actually blanking on the name for that right now. But when you're able to spot those species in that habitat, you found an area that's likely to also have ovoids. And it will be much more likely to have those mushrooms in it after you've had a few days of the following weather pattern. So weather is very important in locating these. You want to narrow down with habitat, and you want to narrow down weather. The weather pattern you're looking for is 3 or 4 days of steady rain to get the ground really moist, with daytime temperatures no higher than the mid-60s in Fahrenheit. Sorry for the rest of the world that uses functional metric. I don't, or centigrade, I don't know the temperatures. But in Fahrenheit, you're looking for mid-60s in the daytime and the nighttime temperatures dipping down to like the mid-40s. That's their ideal temperature range. After a few days of rain, if you have mostly cloudy skies and high humidity in that temperature range, I guarantee you those mushrooms are fruiting. They love that weather. So high humidity, cool temperatures after rain, head out to those creeks and look for box elder, look for nettle, look for ground cover with woody debris growing around, and also a plant called Japanese knotweed, which is an invasive species of plant that grows these long kind of bamboo-like shoots that are also edible. Funny enough, you can collect those when they're young, and they have a flavor similar to rhubarb, which is really interesting. I haven't eaten a lot of them, but they're pretty interesting if you like that bitter kind of rhubarb flavor. You can gather those as well as you're hunting for these mushrooms. And when you find a mushroom you suspect is an ovoid, you can use the following characteristics to identify it. The first is it will have a caramel-colored cap. So it will be anything from sort of hay-colored and tawny to caramel or kind of like light brown. Depending on whether it's wet or dry, it will either have a uniform color or it will be slightly changing or discolored. They call it hygrophonous. It's a feature of a mushroom when the color changes in response to temperature or to humidity content. So notice if it's got a caramel-colored cap or a brown cap and also a white stalk. It will have a white stalk as well, which will be straight and fairly narrow. The gills will not be attached to the stalk. They won't run down the stalk at all. They'll kind of curve into the cap. And the gills will also run right up to the margin of the cap. There won't be like any kind of overhang there. So the gills run right to the edge of the cap. They don't run down the stalk. The stalk will be thin and white, about half the width of your finger. So maybe a few centimeters wide, about less than 1/4 of an inch wide, and even in length. So the cap, the stalk won't get thicker or thinner. It'll generally be the same length all the way up to the cap. The cap will be about the size of a quarter, or smaller or larger. That's a decent sized mushroom when it's about this big, or maybe like the size of a ping pong ball around. It'd be a good cap size for the mushroom. And it will have what they call rhizomorphs, which is like a kind of furry-looking texture at the base of the stalk where it's coming out of the ground. That's a really good indicator as well. But it's another super key indicator is that the stalk, the white part in particular, and the margins of the cap will bruise blue. So that is a super, super key indicator of this mushroom. The bluing is the oxidation of the psychoactive compounds that you're looking for. So when it's damaged, it will bruise blue. So when you think you have the mushroom, pick it up, maybe roll it in your fingers and like set it in your basket for a minute. And if you observe any color change, that's a very good sign. You also want to make sure that the mushroom kind of has a brittle texture and breaks easily. That's a really important thing to look for. And you want to make sure that the gills have a dark color to them so that they're like kind of purplish looking. And you can take a spore print of the mushroom, which means leaving the cap sitting on a surface for a little while and let the spores deposit to make sure that the print is either black or purple. If it's brown, it's very risky because these mushrooms do share a habitat and some similar characteristics with a deadly mushroom called a Galerina mushroom, which has a protein in it that interrupts the functioning of your kidneys. And if you eat even one of them, you can be on dialysis for the rest of your life. So be very, very careful. Know how to identify a Galerina, which is another 10-minute video I could record. But the key differences between Galerina and psilocybe mushrooms are the psilocybe have a brittle stalk, the Galerina have a rubbery texture. The psilocybe cap will be usually like a more caramel color versus the Galerina is like a rusty color. The stalk in a psilocybe is white. The stalk in a Galerina is brownish. And the spores in a psilocybe are black or purple. And the spores in Galerina are rusty brown. So if you have a mushroom that's got rusty brown stalk, rusty brown spores, and is rubbery in texture, it's usually a little bit smaller as well. That's a Galerina. It's a beautiful mushroom. Please do not eat it. And with any mushroom you find in the wild, always get a second opinion. Always post a photo to your local mycology Facebook group or ask somebody who knows about mushrooms what they think it is. Get a second opinion until you're very, very confident in your find. And I would never eat anything anyway without a lot of knowledge and practice. It's really just for fun to know that these things are out there, that I'm sharing this information. So that's it. That's my interesting subject is how to find and identify Psilocybe ovoidiocystidiata. Like I said, it's quite a tongue twister. a wild psychoactive mushroom native to my homeland of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Delaware in the northeastern United States. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I look forward to your feedback.